Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome to this conversation. I want us to have a very engaging and candid conversation around critical mineral sourcing, with the background given and the briefing we've had. Investors, as Terian said, there's attracting investment, there's maintaining investment, and what does this look like when you talk about critical minerals? In critical minerals, we're not even talking about supply chains, because supply chains are just a linear supply of these minerals. In critical minerals, we talk about supply web, because it's complex, and it involves very many components which are sourced from very different countries, What does that look like? So to start off this conversation, I want Mr. John Mwendwa, because we do not have any private sector company who could talk from an investment perspective, but your work is to attract investment into this country, ensure we maintain this investment, all right, and we do not mistreat investment as well, isn't it? So tell us, for an investor looking into this conversation and wanting to come into Kenya to invest in the critical mineral space, what is the opportunity in Kenya? How do we make it attractive for them? And also just unpack the risks. Being this is a nascent, we've been saying it's a nascent, we are a nascent mining destination, so what are some of the risks? Because we have to be candid as well, and not just pretend it's all, What are those risks? Please.
Thank you, and really a pleasure to be in this session. And I resonate with the sentiments that you've just shared in terms of the critical nature of the mining. But I always think it's important to put this into context. Investors around the world are looking at where to have policy certainty, where the risk-reward balance can really happen, so that the returns they envision can really then come to bear. And public sector is there to provide that enabling environment, and that's what we really do across government, to really lay the landscape on a compelling value proposition by ensuring it's really an enabling environment where policy incentives, etc., come to bear. And I think it's not only unique for Kenya, but it's actually the African narrative. Global capital today is competing for space on the continent. So if you are from the West and you're here, you're like, yes, where is the next home of capital? And you're thinking, okay, then that is Africa. But we want to ensure when you're thinking Africa, you're thinking Kenya. I think it's just very important. And because we are all competing for capital, capital that drives impact and scale is in different sectors, all right? And there are sectors that have got high job creation potential, ticket sizes are small. And you've got sectors which have large transactions that need scale and muscle, and that's where mining takes center stage. And I know historically we have had a case of an American company, BT, based titanium, which was a really good example of what scale is. And you can imagine, instead of having one, just imagine you have a that scale for 5 or 10 of that scale. And we think that mining presents that. And we really think connecting the interests that we have from US companies and other partners in the world who are looking at mining as the next frontier, then we can connect global expertise, because scale in this sector is in different buckets. It's in the US, it's in Canada, it's in Australia, critically. There are a few other ones, but we think that nexus presents the mining source of mining deals. I will come to the risk element shortly, but where we aggregate that value proposition, what we do at Invest Kenya, working with the Ministry of Mining here, is to ensure the value proposition on mining is really broadly, thematically clear. Because when policy clarity and when there's a value proposition clarity, then big companies may not actually need project preparation help. They can prep their projects so that when they come to us and through partnership with the Ministry of Mining and the National Mining Corporation, they are ready, they are bankable, and I know the mapping of that opportunity really lays with the Ministry of Mining. So for us is to ensure that is clear, and then the risk-reward benefit, and I like to call it a risk-reward because there is no risk-free investment. How to address and mitigate the risk is in how really that investment proposition looks like. And I am sure the PS will look at describing why we think this is possibly the most consequential sector for us as a country as we move forward into the future. The size and scale of impact, both for Kenya and our partners, will be really phenomenal. So we are excited at the trajectory that Kenya is building. I think very soon, I cannot commit because the PS has better sight of the timelines. It will be not a question of who, it's when and when they come. A credible pipeline that is ready, that is investment grade, and then ours is just to accelerate the execution. Because good intentions on paper are always there, and we are now transitioning from rhetoric to really deliberate execution. And execution in mining is not easy. That's why there's a really multi-sectoral approach. So I could go on and on, but really very excited. There couldn't be a better time to discuss mining, critical minerals, and the future of Kenya with mining at the center than now. Thank you.
Right frameworks for investment, legal, regulatory, but also the right time. It has to be the right time and the right opportunity, because it's also about return on the investment, considering the risks. So allow me to ask PS to jump in now, because then creating this right framework and right investment climate, we talk about the legal and regulatory frameworks. Take us through maybe what Kenya is doing to make us the right destination for this investment. What are some of the incentives, if any, that we are giving, fiscal or otherwise, that would position Kenya as an investment destination?
Thank you. I think I'll just take it up from where my colleague Mwenda has stopped and say that indeed, I think as a country, we have prepared very well. One, our legal framework. We had to change the laws, we had to amend our laws to suit the current situation and the current demand or global situation the way it is happening now. And you've said that we are now moving away from, in Africa, we are calling it green energy or green whatever, and then in the West, for example, and other developed countries, they'll call it critical. It is critical to them because it is really essential. And again, here in Kenya, what we have done also is we have now used the word strategic minerals. It is strategic in the sense that it is to our advantage if we are able to place them, position them very well at this right time. So we have prepared, as a country, we have a new act, the CAP 306 of 2016, then laid that foundation that any other investor who wants to come on board, it leads into how do you onboard the investor? How does the investor engage with the community? Where do they start, right? Because we want to know that from end to end. So we've looked at the very critical stakeholder in this, and that is the community. In the whole mining acts and in other jurisdictions, it is about going to where the minerals are, and these minerals are just not operating in a vacuum or anywhere where people are not living. It is actually with us. So it is part of the community. Then it comes to how then do we extract these minerals? How do we engage the community? So from the onset, we must inform the community what are the expectations. So if we are able to convince the community that as much as we have the minerals here, it is you who have been the custodians of these minerals. Now it's high time that we want to extract for the benefit of, one, the community, because we have to start from the community, and then it goes to the entire country for its own economic development. So that ecosystem is what we've built in the law. And it is a clear framework that explains to them, and they always ask, what is it there for us? The community always asks first. So we always tell them that we have prepared all this in terms of revenue sharing. Revenue sharing. So we must go with that formula of revenue sharing. And I think for us as a country, we've already passed those regulations that clearly stipulates how revenue is going to be shared between the community, between the county government, because we are operating a devolved system. So how is the devolved government also benefiting from this? Because they are the custodians. Two, now the national government, which as per the constitution, it gives the national government the mandate and says that all minerals, both in the surface and in the land, belongs to the people of Kenya. So how are the people of Kenya going to benefit from these minerals? So that there is that convergence. Then we now turn to our investors, those who are bringing the capital to come and invest. So what we have done in that space also, with a clear framework, we have what's called the fiscal incentives that we give them. So it's very clear within the East African Customs Management Act, third schedule provides for exemptions on some of the equipments. So we are incentivizing them because we know if you add duty, which is the government taxes, it will make it very expensive for our investors as they come. So we grant them again some special exemptions so that they come in with the equipments so that they come and do the extraction of these minerals. Now we are going further. We are now changing, say, okay, fine. Because if we do the valuation of this, there is what's called the in situ value, where you just know these are minerals, these are cost. If you calculate royalty from that, it will be, this is a revenue that you'll get. But now we are going further, and that's what the cabinet secretary said, we need beneficiation. We need the value addition. So we all agree that we are saying, why should you extract and take it very far to go and process? If we are to industrialize, then you must also do value addition here. So there are different stages of value addition within the mineral sector because the extraction, all those process, flotation, until you now get the processing to 99.5%. So we are saying if we cannot achieve that 99.95%, then at least it should be over 70% that you should be able to do it. What does that do? It creates employment, which I've been saying that, you see, in Africa, we have got the youngest population. Where are we going to take them? And then we'll be talking about how minerals are going. So things globally have changed. So we as a country, we are well positioned now to take advantage of this. And it has happened at this time. I don't think we're regretting as a country that we never ventured into mining. I think it's happening at the right time because we have the best human resource that can be able to be used, the expertise that the investors come. They find this expertise here. So that's how we are going to benefit as a country. And we always call it a win-win situation because we don't want the community to, one, start complaining. And it's going to happen. Base Titanium, for example, they've cleared, the mine life came to an end. They did, I think, 12 years or so, or 15 years. And you see, they have left. But the community around Base Titanium are a very happy community. It is because of how they engaged. And all this happened because of the legal framework. They were able to get their share of the revenue from the minerals. So it's a win-win situation as a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PS. You highlight very key issues. You bring out aspects of ESG that are always discussed by investors, you know, from an ESG perspective. How are we de-risking the opportunity? How are we ensuring, you know, nobody gets disenfranchised as extraction is happening, right? Kenya is talking about having community development agreements as a very futuristic, very ambitious way to ensure we're putting this, the community's perspective into this, right? So let me change that a bit and go to Josh, because then this is inward looking as Kenya and what we are doing. But then there's also the investor looking from out in and comparing us also, because capital doesn't just come to us. They're also comparing us against other destinations who are also looking for the same investment, right? So Josh, from a financing perspective, from development finance aspect, as from the American government perspective, looking into Kenya, you know, as an investment destination for mining and a source of critical minerals, you know, what are the priority areas that you're looking at? What makes Kenya an attractive investment destination for the US companies to want to come here? What are some of the risks as an investor that, you know, you're also looking at when you look at Kenya, given that it's still an ascent mining destination, all right? How do you want to de-risk that? And you can also equip that a bit with aspects that are coming up on ESG assessments when it comes to where capital is flowing and how financing is finding the opportunity.
Great. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be back here first and foremost. I mean, it's my first time back to Kenya in my capacity in the government. But I would say that, you know, to start it off, you know, we know that geology dictates geography, right? And so Kenya's been blessed with some really good geology. You know, and then the second part is it's an amazing partnership, right? So I think it's a no-brainer from the government perspective to engage with the Kenyan government, government to government, and really work with our counterparts to understand what those resources are, what the considerations are around them, what works for Kenya and what works for us, right? I think you heard the DepSec and the Cabinet Secretary both say, America first, Kenya first, and I think that's really important. When we say America first, we don't mean America alone or America exclusively. We're looking for that partner, and I think Kenya presents itself as a natural partner in this conversation. When it comes to the gentleman here explained it very well when we talk about risk-free rates and just the considerations around investing. Strong institutions, as the Cabinet Secretary mentioned in his opening remarks, right? Kenya has strong institutions. You have the rule of law, you have recourse in the courts here, but there's also accountability at home, and I think because of that partnership and how strong it is, it makes it relatively a simple process to invest and move capital into this market. What bogs it down is the details, right? So when we talk about regulatory considerations, social license, and things of that nature, that's where we really lean on our Kenya counterparts in the private sector here to tell us as visitors, right? Because we are visitors in this country and we're visitors in this industry. In many cases, we're investors. So we rely on that partnership and that strong commitment and really just being candid up front. And most of the time, what we're concerned about is what doesn't work in these deals, not what works. Everybody knows what works. And, Mark Twain said it best in America, the definition of a miner, right? Miners are nothing but liars standing over holes in the ground. So, I could tell you, I hear about 1,000 projects, a month, and maybe 2 of them are real, right? So that's a consideration in government when we don't have the arms and legs that maybe our private sector counterparts have when we look at de-risking investments and doing the due diligence and understanding what's going on. So again, as visitors, just imagine how difficult that is at home when we go overseas, when we come to partner in host countries like Kenya, we really rely on these 2 gentlemen here on the stage and the larger ecosystem here. So I would say that we are excited about the partnership in Kenya. There's very real opportunities here. We can classify minerals however we want for our own countries, but the reality is they are critical globally. They're critical here in Kenya too, right? If you want to reindustrialize just like we're doing in America and become an industrious nation, then the inputs for everything that we do are minerals. It's a minerals-based economy. You can't even drill for oil without minerals. If you don't have the minerals, you can't make the drill bits, right? So everything that we're doing, most of the things that you have today are minerals-based. So this is why it's so strategic. It's why it's such a hot topic of conversation. And I think it's very important. The Secretary and the President want to secure the Western supply chains. And I think Kenya is going to play an anchor role in that here in the future.
Thank you. And I think from what we heard from the opening session, Kenya sounds that they're ready to play this anchoring role, but I think it's also what does preparedness look like. An issue of regional collaboration comes up when we talk about processing of minerals. Because if you take a computer chip, the number of minerals, or a solar panel, you have niobium. Another country needs to have cobalt. Somebody else needs to have graphite. Somebody else needs to. And what we are seeing is cocoons of African countries each talking about processing and thinking about themselves, right? But the processing plant must bring all these components together to have the end product, yes. So, John, let me throw this to you from an investor perspective in terms of how do you see regional collaboration of African countries coming in here as we all pit ourselves against each other, looking for capital to invest in this sector? What is the role of collaboration as well in that space? And I know I'm really throwing you into the deep end, but just reflect, offer a few reflections.
Well, we had an interesting conversation last night with an investor over dinner, and I saw some of the people in that dinner. And, we must really take a pause and reflect on circumstances that are happening in Africa today. This is the future of global investments is going to be in Africa, no doubt about it. But integration and value chains are so crucial in creating scale. Inevitably, it must be important. But remember, the reality is we compete as countries for capital, inevitably. So we will take a Kenya-centric view, and a country X or Y in the region will take their view, because initially we are all really trying to accelerate development. So there will be country strategic interest to just progress that. My gut feel is in the next 5 to 7 years, that will continue to still be the case as we scale up, compete, and that's why we see our infrastructure roadmap continues to be really, there's a pace on the enabling infrastructure, which is what then investments ride on to make a fair return. So issues of price discovery and the risks that come with it and how investors' price points on investment happen may initially take a Kenyan view, for example, then a Pan-African just comes center stage after that. So then a country strategy on mining, and I'm sure that's what the colleagues in the mining ministry think through, is really how ready are we first to do as much value addition, mining beneficiation to create lasting impact, and then you have the gravitas to then pull the regional view. But if we can convince some of our colleagues on the continent to really open that up as is the dream and vision at the FCFTA level, ESC level, then it can move out. So my thinking is it will take some time, but I think the momentum is the countries that provide clarity and stability on policy and regulation that ensure the enablers to make this mining value chain work, then we will simplify the web. But if it's a web, there are so many moving parts. Boiling the ocean is always what I advise against because you will never get it done and you spread yourself too thin. So we possibly just ask ourselves, what are the initial buckets? The first 2, 3 that create the right momentum, then the lift-off can happen. I mean, that's how I see it.
Thanks for that. Well taken. PS, allow me to come back to you. This common term that is used, ESG assessment, it's normally a very broad framework that at times blocks investment where it's supposed to safeguard investment, right? But you have really highlighted the social part of it, which is very well taken care of because it told us about community development agreements, engagement with communities. But it also has an aspect of environmental safeguards. And especially because in Kenya, one of the critical minerals in niobium, the environmental safeguards seems to also be ringing very loud and clear on how that is going to be taken care of, yes. So you've spoken about the social aspect very well. Please tell us a bit about the environmental safeguards as well, because investors also want to know what does it take, what does Kenya want from them, getting the license, post as they're leaving as well, as you've said about titanium as they're leaving, what does that look like from the environment perspective? And you can also talk about governance aspects so that we really have finished the ESG properly.
Thank you, but before I go to that question, let me just add to what my colleague Mwenda said on the first question. I think it is important to understand that countries within its being the neighbors have formed regional economic blocks. And in these regional economic blocks, they have set up, some of them have set up the customs union, for example, meaning it allows for free movement of goods from one to the other. So I think it is important that governments who have come together and now looking at mining sector and then needs to look at how then do we come in and say work together. If the framework is not clear, then there should be a clear framework so that it allows free movement of the minerals within the region, then you create a hub so that there is that multiplier effect that this will be processed and it allows also employment within from the region. So again, that is just the countries to position itself because we in Africa are at the right time we're having the minerals that is in demand. So it's the only way is to position ourselves. Now let me come to the question of the ESG. I think I've talked about the social, and that is what people look at. Then we go at the environment. I think the framework for environmental management is also very clear, and it's a national a policy or function that is also shared with the county, and not only the county, it's also the community. So they have been in this environment and they are the first people to be affected. They should be looking at the impact of the mining. So the first thing they need to do is, how are you going to do your mining? Right? That means you're either going to displace people, or if there is going to be, we are going to have some of the, like pollution. Some of the minerals have the radioactive. How are we handling it? So the most important thing is now the governments, the regulatory agencies that then work on the issues of environment. How has the investor put it in terms of making sure that the environment is secure? And in our Mining Act, it says the person or the company that have been given the mineral rights should or must return the environment or take it to near where it found. So one, it's already embedded in the law. You can't just come and extract and move away. So we have made it clear from the onset that if you accept to be given the rights, then you should comply with that condition. The other one now is the other agencies, the environment, say NEMA, for example, the National Environmental Management Authority, comes in and says, okay, fine, you've done the environmental impact assessment, we know exactly what is the impact, how will it be. They have gone further in the NEMA regulations. They have gone further to safeguard the community and the environment by ensuring that there is a bond, that if you must deposit the equivalent of restoration of the environment, so that in case anything happens, then that authority will be able to bring back the environment the way it is. What we have learned from Base Titanium, because it's an end-to-end, we have seen it, it started here, did the mining, and now the mining closure. We formed what's called the post-mining land use. So we again sit down with the NEMA, with all the other agencies, and then say, how do we restore this? Do we need a forest here? Do we need a conservancy here? How do we do it? And then we give them the approval then to proceed. This is what they had already initially planned. And then we follow with them. How are they implementing this across? Because they don't just do mining and then stop. As they do mining, they're also doing environmental restoration. So these two go hand in hand. So I think in terms of the ESG, the governance structure that we've put in place, where we bring in other agencies, then that helps us to make sure that we have proper governance when it comes to the environment. So for me, I think the framework is there. The investors are given this from the onset. They have studied, they know what is their requirement, their obligation, and they simply follow it. And some of them have said, we don't want to touch anything that will bring conflict. So some of these investors who come from countries with very stringent, we were in America the other day. One of the issues that caused a problem in mining in America is the stringent environmental laws that are there. Very stringent. So, and you can see other countries, other jurisdictions have also adopted that. And these mining companies have learned to make sure that they comply, because if they don't comply, then their rights to mine that mineral will be withdrawn. It's that simple. Withdrawing of the rights. So, and that's what we have, because we have not given them anything exclusive. We only gave them the rights to extract. If they are doing it wrongly, we simply withdraw those rights. So the governance issue is clear. That framework is there. And it's not only the Ministry of Mining, it's also being administered by other agencies. The Ministry of Environment, for example, for the purpose of the National Environmental Authority. Yes.
Thank you, Pierre. So institutional arrangements, and frameworks to ensure that these are already safeguarded by the laws. Yeah, good submission. So Josh, before I open it up to the panelists, from the American government perspective, from American investors' perspective, how will we term this as shared prosperity in terms of in the investment opportunity, in the multiplier effect of this opportunity? How do we frame responsible sourcing? What would be the priorities? And that, from your outlook, how does that look like? And how do we frame those conversations and facilitate those kind of conversations?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, I can just say that, we're very confident in our American companies and the operators, and they've done a great job globally already. And we talk about ESG and whether it's a shared definition, I think it's important. Everybody's got a different place they jump off from. But, the reality is, from an investor's perspective, that when these kind of considerations are baked into the process from the beginning, it's actually more profitable. So, we just have to avoid the onerous and kind of overbearing regulation that comes on top of it. And I think part of the way we do that is working with our partners and making sure we have that social license before we ever hit the ground, right? So you have that community buy-in and everybody understands what the economic benefit's going to be and the prosperity, that shared prosperity that you referenced. For us, we're excited to see Kenya become that regional hub. I think it's a thing that's very possible. The potential is enormous here. You got great infrastructure, you got great port access. So there's a lot of things that we look when we look at a mining investment, because it's not just about the mineral, right? It's about all the things that support it. Everybody knows we need dedicated power, we need dedicated water, you need a workforce. You have a great workforce here in Kenya, you have a culture of this. So I think that, it's going to be technology transfers. Where can we bring our technology in, our expertise, and work with our counterparts to build that capacity here domestically so that we can move on to other places and leave this flourishing. And the goal from the onset, to be clear, is that it's a shared venture, right? I mean, there's enough coming out of the ground globally. The key part is that these minerals make it back in the supply chain so that we can avoid disruptions globally and the geopolitical kind of considerations there. And so a strong Kenya, a strong mining sector in Kenya is only better for us as well. So I think that we're all on the same page. And from an investor's perspective, it really does come back to the regulatory environment. And of course, the PS and the Cabinet Secretary have worked so hard to communicate with us and reassure us and show us, right? Not just reassure, not just conversations, but these are real tangible things. There's a good example in Base Titanium and how that's worked here. And we look, like John said, we'd like to see 5 or 10 projects, here in the next few years. So we're excited about it.
Thank you for that. I hear a lot of commitment and clarity in it. It will be shared prosperity, and you're keen to ensure everybody gets to benefit. I guess it's what was being called a win-win situation, right? Yeah. So it's time now for you to join this conversation. I think the conversation has been very up here. If you have a question that you'd wish to direct to the panel, please state your name and direct your question to whom you'd want to respond to what you want to ask. So by show of hands, let me see anyone who would want to join this conversation. Yes, I have 2 gentlemen there.
I'm Professor Cheriot from Taita Taveta University, from the School of Science and Informatics. And I'm here with my colleagues, headed by our professor, Fred Semil Barasa, who is our Vice Chancellor. And in the school, I have IT, I have GIS, I have computer science, I have software engineering, and cybersecurity. And I have very talented young people who are very good in these fields. And we want to see, and we are excited when we see mining in the future, so that we always do what is called interdisciplinary research and solutions. And in Taita Taveta, as we know, we have minerals, a lot of it, and we've used IT-related solutions for prediction, for risk management, and so on. So as an institution like Taita Taveta, how can advanced technology that we have, like AI-driven exploration, advanced technology, remote sensing, automation, etc. How can this, or how has this been used to leverage, or between the US and Kenya partnership, to reduce social or geological, operational, and ESG risks, especially within the Kenya's critical mineral sector? I wanted to hear this so that as an institution, we want to really be very excited so that in the partnership that we are going to have, we will know that this, as an institution, we will have a place where we will really participate in these areas. And I think this can easily be addressed by Josh. Thank you.
Josh, wait first. Let's take 1 round of questions, and then you'll respond, then we'll take another round of... so maybe we have the next.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Kasomo from Taita Taveta University, is my colleague, from the Department of Mining and Mineral Processing. And this partnership is a very great conference. We're investing in Kenya mining future. My concern is particularly on issues of this partnership, maybe the US-Kenya. How are we going to assure in this partnership that community benefits on environmental protection and transparency are built into projects for exploration stage, particularly in region which are dominated by artisanal miners and small-scale miners? Thank you very much. And this may be addressed by our very honorable Ari Kimtai, PS, State Department of Mining. Thank you very much.
All right. Waziri?
My name is Mokwere, Chirau Ali Mokwere, and I'm standing here as the Gambera of the Digo community. There is a problem that has surfaced. The definition of the local community, the one that eventually receives 10% of what the government receives from the investors. Of course, 70% goes to the government, central government, because all minerals belong to Kenyans. 20% to the county government, in accordance with the Mining Act 2016. And 10% goes to the local community. We all know that there will come a time when the government of Kenya, which is right in the center part of the whole exercise of mining, will identify an institution, a company that will do the mining. But then there is the critical mining area. I'll use the word critical because I've used it here again. Let's take the example of Mrima. The hill is the critical mining area. But then the community around Mrima is affected in one or the other. And maybe by definition, together with the critical mining area, people who are at the critical mining area zone, and the surrounding community would be beneficiaries of the 10% problem. We have not defined local community sufficiently because based on what economists call inside trading, there are already big companies that are buying off land around the critical mining area. So that there will come a time when the local community will not be there. It will be landowners from other parts, maybe the country or even overseas, based on willing buyer, willing seller. And when you're dealing with a very poor community, it is easy to convince them to take just a little money and forgo their ownership. So I'm increasingly observing the local community at Mrima not being Digos, but being other people. Don't quote me, maybe Chinese. That's just for the purpose. What safeguards do we have as a country to ensure that people do not take advantage of poverty and where they use inside trading, prior knowledge of what is coming up, and in the process impoverish the people around Mrima or the actual landowners? What safeguards are we going to have? Thank you.
Thank you, Waziri. And for the benefit of those who don't know, that is a former Minister of Mining and a previous boss of mine as well. Any last questions before I return it back to my panelists? Yes, sir.
I'm Abhishek. I'm the Senior Director for Transport at Trademark Africa. My question is to Josh. How do you view the competition for critical minerals with China as we see it? You know, it's the major other country which is working on the sector, and what are the instruments that you think the US can deploy to support Kenya and the neighboring countries to be a supplier of these resources and including process resources to the US?
Fred Barasa from Taita Taveta University. We were encouraged to ask some of the most practical questions, and that's what I want to do. When an investor comes in the country and they are getting a site where mining is to take place, you'll find you are either going to a virgin land, quote unquote, nobody is doing anything there, but you also encounter cases where there are already local people that are mining. For example, like gold mining in Kakamega or Migori. So when you want to bring a company, then the local community puts up a very spirited opposition to the investor. And one of the things that we do in policy, and that is very closely related to what Honorable Maguire has raised about defining the community within our policy framework, but it goes beyond that. Why would people who are already mining gold resist an investor that has been identified by the upper legions of government, either at national level or county level, that are going to benefit the communities? Because this small mining person thinks you are interfering with their livelihood. That is a place where they get the money to run the family. But we have no way of determining how much money do they actually get per month. And if they were given 20 years to mine the way they are doing, how much will they raise? Now, in our approach, the community and the sharing formula is defined broadly as national government, county government, and community, but not at macro level of this individual. Now, is there an effort by government to say, you go to talk to these people and factor into it how much they will have earned and assure them that they are going to earn more actually by this company coming than what they own and how much they will use to get it? How do you go down to the macro level and mitigate the clashes that we see in our country in terms of resisting investment because of wrong perceptions or misplaced benefits from the community to the individual? That's what I wanted to see what our PS, Harry Kumtaye, can say, and the other investors, because that's a practical issue you will face.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, Josh, you have 2 questions. Please combine your response on skills transfer, digital technology infrastructure.
Yep, so for the first question from the professor from the university, in America right now, we have massive university partnerships. We have the national lab ecosystem. We're using sensors throughout the whole value chain, especially in the extraction process. We actively have technologies that are being developed to put more sensors in, right, to measure exactly what those considerations you asked about are. So what's the impact in real time that's happening in the ground, in situ? And then as we remove these minerals, we're moving towards actually only bringing the processed material to the surface. That's the goal. You know, we're probably 15 years away from that, but that's the technology. That's where sensors are going. So as you're talking to your students and the interdisciplinary kind of science and stuff that's going around this, technology has made mining much more efficient, much more environmentally friendly, and we're embracing that and investing heavily in it. To the gentleman about China, I think it's an easy answer. We're not really concerned. We're a better partner. We have shared values with our partners. We actually follow through. So I think at the end of the day, we just want a fair marketplace to compete in, and I think that's what everybody wants. So if we have parity in the market and a level playing field, we're confident in American companies being able to bid and win and partner and deliver with our counterparts. I think that, you know, we often the pushback we get on that's pricing, you know, the initial price. I think there's a lot more value added with the relationship with our companies because it's not just on the price. You know, you think about Chinese companies when they come in, they win a project and they import the workforce, they build up temporary dormitories, they import their equipment, and once they're done doing that, everything leaves, right? Our goal is to come in here and build foundational elements of an industrial base to partner with this for a durable and long-lasting relationship. So I think we're very confident in our ability to compete and win in the market if the market is a fair and level playing field, if there is that parity. And so that's why we work very closely with our counterparts to ensure that that's there for everybody, because we want that market. The marketplace is open. We're open for business. I think Kenya's open for business, and the rest of the continent, right? And so as long as we can do that and work towards that in earnest, I think we're going to be in a good spot.
Thank you. PS, I want you to keep your responses very brief because they both speak to the same space, something you've highlighted before. It also feels like we need to have another conversation away from this panel that is local to some of the issues being brought up here. We need a greater conversation about local community and value. So keep it relevant to this panel on investment and communities, and then we can take it off-site for the local conversations.
I agree with you. We have to keep it local because these are really local issues.
I think the issue is partnership that is coming out very clearly. How do the companies that have come, how do they partner with the community? How do they partner with the government? So it's important to have this partnership so that each understands their role and the benefits that they're going to get out of it. The affected community, how do we define them? I think it is clearly defined in the acts that the community is defined in the Mining Act as the people who are affected by the mining operations or activity. So then, as they do the environmental and social impact assessment, they should be able to identify those people who are the people who are likely to be affected. So it comes back to that, and then we go to the act, and then we list down, these are the affected community. The issue of those who are settling there, sometimes you go back and say, are you an immigrant? Have you just come here? So these are some of the questions that are asked during the impact assessment so that it is understood, because somebody is bright enough, speculative, and they're all there. So they have come here for the purpose of speculation, nothing else. But are they going to be affected? They have not been affected because they've just bought the land. They're affected in a positive way in the sense that when they sell that land, the value has gone up. So these are the things that we work very closely with the Ministry of Environment to look at how are these people being defined in the impact assessment. The issue of artisanal miners, we in mining, and our senior geologist is here, those are the first people who discover where the minerals are. So what we are saying is, before this new investor comes in, we have to coexist. The law provides for it in the sense that they surrender a portion of the land where the artisanal miners have been operating, and I'll give them their space because they have to coexist. So it's provided for in the law as well, coexistence. The worst part is when you want to chase them away because they have been there, like for example, the ones of gold, you can't chase them away. They were there before maybe the new company came. But this company is coming to do a mining in a different way. That's what we explained to them, that no, you're not going to be affected. So the other company will tell us how they're going to do the mining. If they're going to do underground mining, they will go, how deep will they go? At the surface here, any person affected by that. So that is our responsibility, capacity building of the community. And you've seen that we have taken over now. Before the government has taken that over, before it was left to the companies. So the government has come to fill that space for the purpose of capacity building, informing the community how they are going to be affected based on the reports that we do receive. Because all those impact assessment reports are submitted to the Ministry of Mining for the purpose of licensing. And we use it now to capacity build the community, to explain to them how they're going to be settled, the valuation of their land, how valuation is going to be done. So all this is captured very well in that. Yes, the deeper conversation will continue.